Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here at the World Percussion Group platform. We are delighted to have yet another WPG alumni in Ksenija. Ksenija, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Tim. It's such a pleasure to be back and to speak to these new enhanced members of WPG.
Yeah, it's great. I was thinking earlier, it's really good to sort of just use this opportunity to catch up with everyone and see what everyone else is doing. Yeah. You know, everyone started on different journeys from over sort of 5, 6, 7 years ago now. So it's great to hear everyone. I didn't know, as we've got a little bit of time, maybe you could just talk a little bit about yourself, maybe some of the projects. I know you've been really excited about your Stravinsky project, which has taken off pretty massively. So congratulations on that. So yeah, for sure, it's yours really. Just let us know a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, it's been quite a journey since my time in WPG as a member, as a co-principal in 2019.
Yes.
I have since have been working at Ksenija University, Corpus Christi. It's been 4 years, and actually this year I won another job, so I'll be moving to University of North Carolina, School of the Arts, starting in the fall, which is super exciting for me. So that's a big deal. Another big deal is that I did arrange that massive thing called the Rite of Spring. It was during COVID, so please don't applaud me. I was just alone and isolated, and there's nothing better to do than to stare at Stravinsky. And recorded that with my wonderful duo partner, Liana Pilot-Zaharin, and we as Vesna Duo had a really fantastic time touring that music, and just a wonderful response from people and from media. So we've played PASIC, we've played Chamber Music America conferences, and what else? I've released that arrangement recently because a lot of people have been asking for it. So now they can get it. And I've been just doing a ton of playing, a ton of teaching, learning about teaching also. This is something that I love a lot. So I'm really grateful that I have this opportunity to do this online with people. I know you always curate a wonderful group of musicians, so it's a pleasure to get to chat with them. And I've been sort of going back a little bit more into composition. I arrange a lot of music, but this past year I wrote my first wind ensemble piece, Slavdom, and that's been a big deal for me. Yeah, and we've recorded it, and we will be releasing it soon, and that's a whole other piece.
Yeah, that's great. So what's out of curiosity, what's the instrumentation like percussion-wise for that?
You know what? It's fairly simple. It's not anything crazy. So you have your regular timpani, snare mallets. There's a drum set in there, a set of toms. I really did not ask for the moon because I, as a percussionist, really appreciate composers who do not ask me to spend an hour setting up, so I play for 15 minutes. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the parts are fun, I think, and challenging, somewhat challenging, not super challenging, but they're challenging enough. But yeah, I really, really like not asking people to bend over backwards for.
Yeah, that's great. So it's actually a wind band piece rather than like a percussion concerto type thing. That's yeah, fantastic. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we should probably bring on our first guest. So we're gonna fly to the US first. We're gonna bring on Remy first. Hey, Remy.
Hello.
Hello.
Perhaps you could talk to Ksenija a little bit about yourself, maybe very briefly, and what you're going to be showcasing today, whilst I just queue up the video.
Sure. So I'm based in Rhode Island in the U.S. Recently, I graduated with my master's from Morehead State University in Kentucky last year. And for the past year, I've been teaching, gigging, doing all sorts of odd jobs. I work a lot in music production for classical music, for folk festivals, for wedding bands, just a lot of different jobs. And then on the side, I play, I practice, I try to learn new music when I can. So yeah, this piece I'm going to be presenting, Remnants, was written a few years ago by an alumnus of where I got my master's, and he wrote all these different pieces. Didn't really have a great way to record them, so he contacted the professor at Morehead State, Dr. Ben Cantrell, and sort of asked if some of the students could record some of them. So that's how I got connected with this piece. Yeah. And I just I looked through all the different ones he had. I think there were about 6, and this one really kind of spoke to me. It had a really unique, just compositional structure. It had a really, I don't know, it just spoke to me in a way. I liked the whole idea behind it, the whole story behind it, and it just sort of what drew me to it. Yeah, that's,
Awesome.
I think that's kind of it.
All right. Great. So we're going to hear, I believe, the second part of this. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, part 2. It's called Reconstruction.
All right. If we could mute our mics, that would be great as well.
Yeah.
All right, over to Ksenija for a little while.
All right. Really, really wonderful playing, and
Thank you.
you seem, you're welcome. You seem really comfortable behind the instrument and with this music. And since this is very new for me, this piece, obviously,
Sure.
I'd love to hear a little bit more, because I tried doing research on the composer and I did find his website, but
Sure.
not much about him as a person or any story behind this piece. And I'd love to hear sort of what your inspiration is and what you know about the background.
Sure. So I guess I didn't include when I originally got the piece. It was he published it on his website, but later on, I think a few months later, he like redid it and put some background on it. So I guess the short background on that movement. Well, the whole idea is it's about like a fractured mental state of trying to stay calm in a very stressful situation, and the first movement kind of shows, or the final theme with that slows down at the end of the second movement sort of shows the broken state, and the whole second movement is supposed to try to bring it back together, but then it ultimately kind of fails in the end. And so my whole inspiration was it sort of has that hectic sort of really trying to hold on to something, and then at the end you realize you can't. And the part of the piece that really kind of, I guess, sold me on it was the very end. It asks and you to close your eyes and eventually just hit all the wrong notes, and then once you start hitting them all wrong, that's when you end. And I thought there was such a unique ending to a piece, because we always try to play everything right, and then being asked to not play something right intentionally is sort of backwards, which I thought was really cool. And sort of, I guess, compositionally for the piece, speaking with him a little bit about it, he sort of, the way he writes, or my understanding of how he writes, is he comes up with a sort of permutation or improvises ideas, and then slowly that kind of builds into the composition, or then he applies form to the themes and permutations he comes up with, which is interesting. And I could kind of see that in this piece of like everything lays really well and everything flows really well, and it just kind of makes sense, but it's just not like some basic thing you see out of method of movement or something like that. It just sort of has an interesting flair to it.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with you. I thought that ending was really, really smart and very interesting, that it literally asks, please do not play the right notes, and close your eyes to ensure that you do not pick them, actually, which is really great. Well, one thing that was really interesting to me here in the score, and I wonder what your experience was as a player, was at the beginning of it, it says you should be playing this thing also repeats in the second movement for those who just heard this, but that theme in the left hand where you have those fifths sort of jumping up and down, it says mechanically and unchanging, but then your right hand says expressive yet detached. And I think that is maybe a little bit of oxymoron, because in order to express oneself, you have to plug into something, don't you? And can you explain to me just how do you as a player go for that? Because that to me, again, is it's like a puzzle that this piece gives you.
I think, well, thinking back on it when I was learning it, focusing on each hand, is kind of where I started, because I thought the same exact thing of they're two very diametrically opposed ideas. And so just trying to, I thought I had made, like in my brain, I interpreted it as the right hand is quote unquote more important, in the idea of like once the left hand just repeats that bass pattern. So once you kind of understand, or once the audience understands that bass pattern, it's sort of just, all right, I get what's going on there. I don't need to think about it as much. So I think when I was learning it, I just sort of trying to keep my left hand from not changing tempo wise or not bending it, because that was the whole point, was tricky. And then the moments where I tried to put them together, trying to bend the time a little bit with my right hand, like if I was going to sing the melody, kind of bending it that way, but having it not bend my left hand, that was the biggest challenge. So I sort of My personal interpretation was to default to my right hand a little more because I thought that was more interesting for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And just listening to this performance of yours, and I saw that you worked with Anders before, right?
Yes.
And similar to the piece that you played for him, he had a comment that you had a very stable performance, and I thought so too. I think, I mean, I don't know if this is a recording session and you feel like this in a recording session, or if this is the way that you simply are also live. I mean, what you played for him was live, right?
Yeah.
But it's very stable. And so then for me, again, this is highly subjective. The
Sure.
idea of the fact that there is like an internal conflict, or even as I'm thinking of this, like expressive yet detached, it's almost like masking.
Yeah.
When people like can be expressive outwardly, but actually on the inside, that might not be their experience.
Sure.
I feel like the way you played was maybe, I don't know, this is now going to sound even stranger, but like too right,
Okay.
too inky, I wish, or not I wish, I feel like what you could do with this is, obviously this is an amazing way to set a foundation for the piece. You should always understand the ink deeply and the composer deeply. But I wonder, if I didn't know you, or as I don't, how would I be able to know where you are in this music? Like, who is Remy in here? And it's not all Gary.
Okay.
It's not all Gary's writing. And I wonder, did you take any liberties there? Have you experimented with anything sort of beyond what the composer asks for? Just because you are such a great player. And I think it would be so interesting if, once you do this, you learn the rules, you can bend them.
Sure. Are you, sorry, just so I can understand the question, like, are you asking about expressive elements, or like improvising with the themes he gives, or I'm just...
I mean, you could, as a performer, you could choose to do whatever you want. The way your personality shows could be in anything, like the way you present yourself on stage, the way you choose to play the music. Sort of like when you listen to Glenn Gould play Bach,
Yeah.
It's sort of like inside out, but it's amazing. And you hear Bach, but you also really hear Glenn Gould. And I would really be curious to know, like, where is it that you see your own stamp in this music? Because I think right now what I heard was the perfect ink recording,
Okay.
And I would be so curious to hear, what would you make of this if you gave yourself a little bit more liberty with
Sure.
it?
I think my approach, because the whole idea was to record it so he could use it in like publication, was my like initial interpretation was to just kind of play the ink and not make it too unique, because that would sort of, it didn't seem like it was the purpose. The purpose was he can go in to Cian or go to whatever publishing company and play this video and say, here's what I wrote, as accurately as it can be played. But I guess thinking ahead, like, if I was going to put myself more in it, I feel like I don't know, I got the comments, oh, I can play harsh, or on the harsh side. And I feel like this is a kind of piece that could do with that, because the whole idea of it is it's a harsh sort of tone, or at least I hear it as a harsh tone. And I think I could do maybe a different mallet choice, or maybe just different way of approaching it, like show that kind of harshness. Or on the flip side, when it's not supposed to be as harsh, take some away, or just have like more contrast in general.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. And I think you're right. What you did then with this is perfect for the composer. And that is something amazing. And as a player, you should be able to build those relationships to record those things for composers so they can use them. But then sort of, as the more you play this piece, the more that it will grow with you. And it's not like you are not in this piece. There is no way that there is no Remy in this piece, because you played it. But I am really, really curious to know who you are, because your background is so interesting, and what you're doing now with everything that you have as influences is so interesting. And I think sometimes players who are in great control over the instrument, or maybe feel like the music that they're playing is sort of within their means of expression, like it's not, I don't want to say simple, but like it's comfortable in a lot of ways. They can end up spending time in that zone because it's good, right? It's really good, and a lot of people aspire to be there, and you worked really hard to get there. But like, where is the challenge for you as a creative young person who is also, I'm assuming you just graduated last year, or you said recently. Sure. You are building a name for yourself. You're probably looking for concerts and opportunities and so on. Now is the time to really separate yourself, not even intentionally, but really let whatever is in you to shine as a performer.
Sure.
Here's a philosophical question for you. You could, or we could all play for one of the four groups of people when we sculpt a performance, right? You could be playing to please the composer. You could be playing to please the judges, if there are any judges, if you're doing a competition. The audience, you want the audience, so like the regular people who might be buying your product or coming to your concerts, or we're not just talking about connoisseurs and percussion enthusiasts. Or sure. You. Whose vision comes first? Composer, you, audience, or the judges? Or if it's a mix of things, what is it for you? Who are you aiming to please?
I would say, if I had to put them in order, I guess me, audience, composer, and judges, if any. Because
elaborate if you want.
Sure. I mean, I guess if I'm playing a piece, I'm playing it because I want to play it. Like, we've all played pieces because we have to, and it's not enjoyable because it's more of a requirement than it is something you actually enjoy playing. That, and I've always had the opinion of that the stuff we do is a lot more accessible than people think. We just don't get the opportunity to express it. And so, like, if I can, not that this is like an example of a very accessible piece of marimba music. Anyone could listen to this and enjoy it, I feel, I guess, but I'm biased. But I guess some more avant-garde stuff we do, I think, like, people just need a way in. So I think, like, that's kind of where my brain works. It's like, first, I'm the one playing it. If I don't enjoy it, I wouldn't play it. And I can play alone in my room all day. It's good to have an audience, though. So I got to care about what they think.
Agreed. And I think it's always sort of a combination. It's really hard to neglect any one of these, or to not feel the repercussions of trying to neglect one of these. But again, it's interesting to me because you put yourself first, and yet in this one piece, I feel like you have really put the composer first, and that's amazing. That's a trait of a person who understands, who's like has empathy for others, and is able to let other people's vision come in to them and present things. But just again, I would so love to see some risk in here coming from you. Some vulnerability, something like that. I think it's a really interesting piece, as you said, and I think it's a great gateway drug into the world of percussion, because it's I don't want to say exactly easy listening, but it's certainly pleasing, I think, for everybody. But again, I am really curious to see you take a risk. And maybe this isn't, obviously, I'm just hearing you play this one piece. Maybe this piece is a great representation of how able you are to channel the composer's vision and do a great job of a first recording. And that's awesome. And that's what you could also use as a marketing trick, not trick, but a marketing thing for you, where composers will come to you because they know that you're great. But I think you have now reached a point where you can, even with your first recordings, just be bold and be brave and boom, put out something out there that's clearly your vision of music, even if it's a first timer,
Yeah.
Awesome. Did you have any questions about this?
I guess one thing that actually happened with this piece, and I just don't remember off the top of my head. When I was recording it, I recorded it, and then must have been late April of that year. And then I met with the composer at PASIC in November. and I got a copy of the score from him, and he had edited it. And I guess my question is, if in your experience, or how, like, I had the thought of, I should go back and re-record it, or maybe re-record that section or edit it or something like that. And I wondered what responsibility I had to change my recording for the updated score, I guess.
Well, that's very sweet of you to even contemplate that question. I mean, I think depending on your relationship with the composer and what your agreement is, and obviously, if there was ever a conversation about something like this maybe happening, and that they really want the finalized released version recorded by you, then you should. Sure. Or would be obligated, right, to do it. But I think this way, if this was really your investment and your time and your resources, then you don't necessarily have an obligation, I think. And obviously, you can always put a disclaimer on your video saying that this was an early version and that the finalized version can be either heard here or bought here or whatever. I feel like these things have happened before, and you listen to my favorite, The Rite of Spring, has had many versions, and that's okay. And sure. It's also, I think, really interesting for people who might, develop a real relationship with this piece to hear how it evolved. So they have your version, which was like an earlier draft, and then the version that the composer chose to release, and then they could wonder, why did he do this, or so on. So, I mean, again, I think if you can and if you'd like to, you should record it, or could record it. I wouldn't say that you should do anything unless you're being paid or whatever. There's really no, or unless you're buddies and you've agreed on this, there's no.
Sure, it was my understanding of the whole situation was fairly, I don't want to say lax, but sort of symbiotic. Like, we got to record some pieces and get work doing that, and he got some recordings of his pieces, so it all just kind of, it was all pretty even. So
yeah. Well, have you asked him what he thought about that when you saw the released version?
Sorry, can you answer that again? Ask that again.
Sorry. Have you asked him what he thought about releasing a different version?
When I talked to him about it, seemed pretty. I edited this, and I didn't notice, or I never got that copy, or something happened, and I edited it, and I was like, okay. And there was never seemed to be anything about that. I just wondered. That just popped in my brain of what I guess what would in a different setting, or what should be done, or if there is a thing that should be done.
No. I mean, if you can, if it's like very simple for you to go back and, for example, deliver an audio for him, and if these are a few bars that you need to insert that have changed, that you can just record within the same environment, and boom, he can plug that in and put that on his website. That's great. But I mean, a recording is not something that's cheap time-wise or money-wise. So I don't think it's reasonable to quite expect. But what you can expect, I think Casey might have had this happen to him several times, because he would release early versions of his piece, like him playing it, and then would release something else. And then internet trolls would go to his YouTube channel and just be like, bro, you're not even playing the right thing. Like, you wrote it. So you can expect some of those,
Sure.
But they're fun. Just respond with humor. And that's it.
Sure.
A really wonderful job. I think, again, I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This one, Remy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Good. So we're having a few technical issues backstage, but I think we're okay. So Remy, I'm just going to pop you backstage for a second, and we're going to bring on Hoyin, I think now, who is currently studying in London at the Royal College.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing? You okay?
Nice to meet you. Yes, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, fine, thanks. Do you want to just talk a little bit about the piece whilst I cue it up for you?
Yes. So, arranged rhythm for marimba. It was just an idea that suddenly popped in my head last summer, and I saw the score. I loved the piece. I thought it was arrangeable, and hence I arranged it and adapted it for like one person, 4 mallets, and 1 marimba. Yep. That's it.
Very cool. It's really, really cool. Yeah, and very difficult, I must say.
Oh yes, it was very technically challenging, but yeah, I'll just
But
see
you
how.
got it. You got it. You got
Yeah.
it. This is great. Yeah, awesome.
All right, so I think this one is also 10 minutes. So is there any particular part you want me to show?
Maybe the first half. Yeah,
First half.
first half.
Okay. Let's just do that. Okay, brilliant. I will disappear. See you in a bit.
Yeah. This is so
Thank you.
great, Helene. How do
Thank
you
you.
feel about it? This is such exciting music.
Yeah, I loved the way Bartok's stuff actually fits on the marimba, as with a lot of his stuff. It's very easily transferred, although it's very technically challenging. But I just use this piece to build up my independent strokes in a way. So yeah, it's great for technical building as well. Yeah.
I think you've built them up to the max. There's nowhere left to go. Like this is it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a few questions for you, I guess, because these 6 dances that are inspired by Bulgarian rhythms, they come at the end of a really long opus of his. It's like 150 something pieces that he wrote for his son, right? To sort of like build up his playing technique on piano. And the last few, including these, because these are the final ones, they were really performance pieces. They weren't just etudes or educational works.
Yeah.
But I am wondering because they're all sort of coming with the same source of inspiration, how do you see these movements being different? Like what are the different energies that you see in each movement, and how do you make sure that you portray the differences between them so that they don't sound too similar?
I guess the first one is the first one differs from the other movements in terms of its voice feel, and it's more polyphonic in a sense, especially the second half of the first dance, and then the second one differs in terms of its, I guess, as with the second and third one, both of them have that multi-perpetual drive, which is more prominent than in other movements, and the last 3, and I guess, yeah, the last 3 have that perpetual continual groove underlying them. So yeah, I guess that's what makes all 6 of them have their own characteristics in a way.
Right. I think you're very right. The first movement sort of starts with this like opening, really introducing the harmonic structure, just this like linear, like throwing pearls of notes in front of the audience so they hear what the harmonic context is. And then the second movement just starts with a groove. And then the third movement is just like very simple groove, actually. It's not the most devilish Bulgarian groove that one can think of. But in terms of that is exactly sort of that leads to my next question is, I think you're obviously a very, very skilled player, and you did a wonderful job with this. And this is so not easy at all. And when you say you arranged it, I think you've basically taken out some notes in 3-note chords, but you've done 95% of what he asks a pianist to do, which is really not easy. I applaud you for that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
But you know, one thing that's interesting to me is that you have all of these movements, and yet you play them all with the same mallet. And I wonder why. I think again, you're really skilled at shifting the mallet into different directions, but it's still pretty. How should I say? It's using the same brush to do the whole painting or the whole, collage of paintings. And I'm wondering, why did you choose that? And why didn't you try to get, for example, different sets of mallets so that you could maybe lean into the brightness of some music and maybe the articulation of another and maybe the blended colors of a third and so on? Well, like what led to the decision of using the same set?
I actually used different sets for the first and the fourth. So I used a bass mallet for the first and a more articulate mallet for the fourth one because of the really high top note line, and also for the first movement, it's more polyphonic in a sense. And as for the other movements, I feel like it's all very groovy, especially across all registers of the marimba. So it would be best to like highlight the groove and articulations through like just one set of like the same set of mouths for everything. Yeah.
Then my bad that I did not catch that. I probably should have worn my glasses.
So that's fine. They're all shades of red. So.
But still, I wonder. I think they were all then within the same sort of vocabulary. They were all the same manufacturer mallets, right? From the same series, yeah.
Yes,
and
yes.
that is a great solution when we're trying to do something that sort of belongs in the same family. But I also wonder if really choosing something very different so that it sounds very crunchy, because these mallets have a nicer, warmer sound. They're full, but not they're not powdery, they're not cloudy. They're good mallets, don't get me wrong. But I wonder if you chose something that was sort of like, if this is inspired by folk music. Have you heard Bulgarian singers ever sing, like the Bulgarian women's choir? Yeah. I mean, that stuff is brilliant, right?
Yeah.
But it's really here when you hear it, with the way that the harmonies are constructed and how those women sing from their throat. It's like, it doesn't feel like this. I don't want to say it's not warm, that it's not beautiful. It's gorgeous, but it sort of has spiky sound, right? And I feel like your mallets were not spiky. And that's okay. Right. That's a decision that you made, and it's of course totally fine. But wondering with how you could take this to the next level, Also, have you had any? I mean, what is your experience with Bulgarian music or Southeast Europe? Have you had a chance to travel or try any of? This is where I'm from, so I'm just trying to invite you to come to my home country and the surrounding countries, and tell you to experience it, so that you could see the rawness of it. Mm-hmm. How not everything is supposed to be, how should I say, pretty in a way that everything is in its place and it's polished. It's not about that level of. It's not pretty. It's beautiful. It's inspiring, but it's not pretty, it's not symmetrical, it's not organized in the same way as a lot of Western music or ideals or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
So have you?
I haven't tried to travel to Eastern Europe yet.
I mean, I know that's a big investment for, one piece is buy a plane ticket and go somewhere. But you never, it might not be that. You might go to the Bulgarian consulate or something, or their cultural center, and experience some of their paintings, exhibitions, or go to a restaurant and sort of see all the carpets and taste all the heavy food. Are you from Hong Kong by chance?
Yes, Hong Kong. Yes.
Right. I lived in Hong Kong. I mean, you have, in my opinion, the best food in the world, but let me tell you, my part of the world is really close second. It's really good, and you should try.
Okay.
So I really think that, getting sort of into the experience, that, because that's what Bartok did. He traveled to collect this stuff to get inspiration. Mm-hmm. And obviously it's not oh, please spend all your disposable income for this one trip. Obviously not, but see what you can do to really get into his head and to get into this. It's inspired by Bulgarian rhythms, right? It's not Bulgarian music necessarily. Mm-hmm. He didn't take folk phrases from anywhere or anything. It's all original. But it's so good to do this thing, as right as possible, because then you get such a clear emotional connection, and then you can portray something a little bit more differently. Yeah. And here I'll tell you some of the small things that have helped me when I think about this. So in the first movement, when you play, you have all of those ornaments that fall from a top note to a bottom note, right? Yeah. And they're not, a lot of the times they're not even one whole step or half step apart. They're further apart from whatever is the main note that you're playing. Oh. And that comes from that singing tradition where they would sort of it's like a squeak, really. It's not supposed to be pretty. It's not this pearl that's attached to, to a main note. It's really
Oh, it's for that section, it's supposed to be calm. So yeah, That's so now I know why.
Right. But the beginning of it, even on the first page, your tempo is 350, right? So it's like sort of blazingly fast, but you have to feel comfortable with it, which you do, because these time signatures are no big deal in Bulgaria. It's like very simple for them to think in these asymmetrical ways. But for example, these ornaments are really, I think they're there to pop, because again, it is about some of that folk brightness and that throat singing that's just amazing. Let me see. I'm trying to look at more, like when we go again in the first movement to the Kalmo section. I'm looking at page 172. Yeah. So last page of that movement. Have you heard Bartók play this?
No.
So he was a really wonderful pianist, actually. Rare. And he wasn't exactly like a pianist composer like Rachmaninoff. He was a composer who was also like a really skilled pianist. So this is, I think, in my opinion, it's supposed to be pretty gauzy. Like what you did was you calmed it down. But when you hear his version, the way he heard it in his head and then recorded it, that stuff is just magic. And it's actually a little bit even slower than what you'd expect. It just completely, it's like it goes into slow motion and you hear memories of Bulgaria. You don't hear Bulgaria and all of this thing being here. It's like it's this wonderful foggy thing. And then one small thing that was like an arrangement, I wonder, a question really for you, not a suggestion. At the end of your first movement, you have those octaves that you play down.
Yes.
And they always start from they start from A first, and then from G going down, and then from F. But in the original, they're supposed to start from a high octave, mid, lowest, right? And you just chose to play them, I think, starting in the same octave, right?
Yes.
Can you do something so that you make that octave leap within them?
I have thought about it actually, but because of the baseline obligations that, and because my arms aren't that wide enough to just start from the highest octave, so that's why I chose it to do it that way.
And I totally understand. I completely understand. And this is a time of when you're arranging, of prioritizing, is it the octaves here that were important? Because this is obviously like a powerful ending. Or is it the fact that this thing, even though it resets, it's sort of like, it obviously fails. It doesn't manage to get all the way up every time. And, sometimes that can be resolved. I don't know. You could try this and it might sound like rubbish. But just give it a go. Try playing an octave on top and then just play single notes. So don't actually worry about playing all the octaves. But respect the difference between the beginnings of phrases. So those octave leaps. And see, that shouldn't interrupt your baseline. Yeah. And see if that sounds interesting at all. Or you might be able to play octaves the first time, octaves the second time, and the third time it's just going to be a single line, But thinking about some of these details, because that's the beauty of arranging, is that you can re-envision also things and really think about, okay, well, what is the skeleton here and what am I trying to preserve and you can also take liberties and change things, So that's just like a little thing. I thought that was wonderful. I would say, in general, you played everything really virtuosically, and that's awesome. You're a really stellar player, and I really did not see you struggle, even though you said that this was, to improve your technique. I think you have really reached a very, very fascinating, wonderful level, sort of like how when you see Theo Milkov play and he is just so relaxed with all this pianistic repertoire, you give me this vibe of like no issue while you're playing, which is really amazing. But some of this music has really big tension in it. Not all of it, but some of this music is like gritty and, like grinds against something. And again, it's that part where I encourage you to go to a Bulgarian quarter or restaurant or something to like experience this thing from the inside. But that is what I'm missing a little bit, is like, again, the sound qualities that you've chosen with your mallet and with your way of playing is all really pretty. And I think you can do some of it pretty, but you should also explore, I don't want to say, they're not ugly sounds. They're beautiful sounds, but they are different. And the same goes for sort of the intention with which you will choose, say, a tempo within any movement or whatever. Right now, it all feels sort of like comfortable. And I think that is something where you have to deliberately choose that the goal is not for this to be pretty, but to be, maybe true to its roots. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you think about this, or do you think it's okay if you think also this is rubbish and you don't want to do it?
No, I actually had a thought about this after I recorded this. I played this to my teacher, who is from Bulgaria.
Oh, who's your teacher?
Daniela Ganeva.
Okay, wonderful. Oh my God. Well, then oh my God. I am not the right person to talk to you then. You should be talking to Daniela. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I played this to her the day after I actually recorded this, and she gave me this talk. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, and do you have a plan of playing this somewhere? Is it going to be in a recital, in a concert, something?
Yes, I'm planning to play this like whenever I can, like just as a to-go repertoire for the time being. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. You should really keep it in your hands. But then again, I really apologize. I'm like maybe second. I'm second. I'm not Bulgarian. I'm Serbian, but I really feel their culture. And my teacher was also Bulgarian, or is Bulgarian. The person who was my teacher. I just need to really clarify that. But I feel like I really understand and connect with that. And it's really like, for me, almost like if you're choosing to shoot a movie, and you cast, you have an amazing cast of actors. And then what you do with the costume with them and with their voice, I mean, yes, you can make everyone, like, have the goal of everyone just looking as pretty as possible. And for some stories, that might be exactly what you need. But for other stories, that's not the point. The point is that they have a really expressed character and that they have, charm or some asymmetry that you can't look away from. It's just, it's nothing that's less worthy. It's gorgeous in itself, but it's just not all about, being within the pretty spectrum. And so this is awesome. I really now feel so silly that I've spoken for so long, like I'm authority on the Bulgarian culture when you have your teacher.
No, that's totally
awesome.
fine.
That's really awesome. Do you have any questions about any of this? I really feel like you've done a wonderful job.
Well, thank you. I actually have some questions about arranging, I guess, because you've done your Rite of Spring arrangement. So with Rite of Spring, how do you choose which parts to omit? Like the Rite of Spring is more of an orchestral piece, and the thing I'm doing is just a solo piano piece, and the way I choose to omit notes, I guess, is based on doubling of chords and also voicing and stuff. So how do you take priority over these issues?
I mean, that's obviously there are some things that are no-brainers where you don't lose a lot of information if you take something away, like doubling and so on. However, it is when you choose to arrange, for example, the Rite of Spring, going from 100 people playing it to 2 people playing it with a max of 14 notes at the same time, what you choose to do is you choose to show a skeletal version of it. So I know that much of its meat and much of its, how should I say, density of the piece, the thickness, the soup of it will have to go away. But I'm dedicated to it being like an X-ray of the composition. And it really is, my arrangement is how I hear that piece and what lines I choose as most important. But obviously, anytime I go back to listening to the original or any other version, I'm always like, oh, I really wish that line was in my arrangement. It was so beautiful and it adds something magical. But it's just like with anything in music or in life, you have to sort of kill off a lot of opportunities and dedicate yourself to one. And I mean, you get to play around with it. If you get to arrange something for an ensemble, or even for you solo, you hopefully have the chance to try a lot of things out, and then you can get other people to give you feedback. My arrangement, my final version of the arrangement, wasn't just what I thought, but it was also my pianist really gave a lot of feedback on what's possible and what she thinks. And then we talked to people we adore. I mean, I spoke to composers, I spoke to percussionists I really love. I sent them the original version, and they told me a few times, they were like, this solution is really stupid. Like, you should do something else. And I did. And I really had a different sort of view on it that they shared, and it really helped. So I would say just understand that it's evolution. Your first draft is not your final draft, just like with anything you write. And also, it's sort of, since it's a selfish process, I think, arranging, because I arrange because I want to play it. And then if other people get it, that's great. But it also is, you're led by what you like. I mean, an arrangement doesn't give the promise of being the same experience or in any way enhanced experience than the original. I'm never going to be better than Stravinsky. I mean, I'm not stupid, not that stupid. But it's just a way for me to play it the best I can with what I'm given for my instrument. So yeah, I think just be bold and play your arrangements for people early enough so they can tell you, so that you can change things around before you get too emotionally attached to it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, lovely to meet you.
It's really, really lovely to meet you as well.
All right, fantastic. Well done, Hoyin. Excellent.
Thank you.
And I believe Hoyin's actually our youngest ever WPGer. She's 19 years of age. So.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So.
Okay, I'm gonna unplug now and quit percussion. Okay, bye.
So yeah, congratulations.
Wow, congratulations. That's awesome.
All right, we're just gonna.
Thank you so much.
Well done. Excellent.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. All right. I think we're gonna go to Venezuela now.
All right.
Hey guys. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Hello.
So, hi. I think probably what I'll do, they have a translator, but I'll just sort of fill you in on the trio first, and then it'll be quicker that way. So yeah, Trio Catatumba, they're part of a wider scale percussion ensemble, which is formed of professionals and students as well. They're part of the El Sistema contingent in Venezuela, and they also have professional orchestral jobs as well. So, and I believe the piece they're going to showcase is Nimrod from Enigma Variations, and this is Jose's arrangement, who is the guy on the right, just so you know who you're talking to.
Okay, good. Nice.
Okay, so I think we will go ahead and just play this one straight away, and then unless Ksenija, you've got any specific questions you want to ask these guys first.
I was just gonna say hola, gracias por tocar tan hermosa música, and that's it.
Oh, you can do it in Spanish if you want. That's even better.
No, I practiced this.
Great surprises. Never cease with Ksenija. Right, nice one. Okay, so let's have a little listen to a little bit of Nimrods.
Ahí está. Exacto.
Wow, amazing. Gracias. Really, so beautiful.
Thank you.
Can I know your names? So we have Jose and
Jose, Jude,
and Naibet.
oh, I can't hear. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's so bad. Can you repeat?
So we have Jose. This is Jose. We have
You?
Juice, and we have Naipet.
Naibet. Okay. Wonderful. Me encantada. Nice to meet you. Awesome. So I love this. I think this is really beautiful. And I think I saw your previous session where you worked with Cameron.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I can maybe just mention a little something related to what he said, which is communication.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
we get it.
So you play beautifully. And the thing that I believe in is that what makes chamber music magic is friendship.
Okay.
And it's a real friendship in life, but also friendship on stage.
Okay.
And I think the way you are set up now makes sense to put the melody forward and to have obvious, sort of following and counterpuntal voices in the back.
Okay.
It looks beautiful, but it doesn't allow you to look at each other.
Se ve muy bien, pero no les permite mirarse a ustedes, entre ustedes.
Okay.
And this is just my preference. I would rather have you in a triangle like that, where you can look at each other and smile and have a good time, than to have like a leader and followers,
Sería mejor que estuvieran como posicionados en un triángulo en donde se pudieran ver, en vez de tener como un líder y los que la sigan atrás.
Okay.
Pero eso prefiero.
Okay.
And I always do this little experiment with my students where I ask them if they're in a group and they play really well together, but they never look up, if they could stand next to each other with their backs to each other. So like not looking at each other.
Ok, o sea que sí, siempre es un experimento de que sus estudiantes tocan como de espaldas a ellos para ver si qué tal es la química entre ellos.
Okay.
Can you try that for me? Could you turn your backs to each other and just look in opposite directions? So we
Si
see
pueden
if this
ponerse
works?
de una manera en que los tres se den la espalda así como en un triángulo para que se den la espalda. ¿Sí? Like that? Is that okay?
Yes, that's perfect. That's perfect. You are as good as dancers. This is great. Okay, so now I want you to just try to understand whether you feel how the other people are doing at that time, what their energy is, whether they are smiling or not. Can you, when you're facing them like that, really feel what they are?
Intenten percibir la energía o como que la actitud de la otra persona sin tener que verla como tal.
And now turn around and don't
Ahora,
speak, just look at each other.
solo véanse entre ustedes, no hablen, solo véanse entre ustedes. Y véanse nada más, pero no hablen.
This is it. You see friendship immediately starts to show in your mouth. Like, you start smiling.
Siempre aparecen en eso.
Claro.
And this is really true for audience members, I think. I know it's really simple, but a simple look can change the energy in the room, even between 2 people or 3 people who aren't even conversing, but they're just looking at each other. All of a sudden you feel the warmth from them. Yeah?
Desde la perspectiva de la audiencia cambia como que la energía que le imprentan a la pieza de la manera en que ustedes se ven y interactúan entre ustedes.
That's a small comment. You could choose, obviously, you're great players. You could choose to do whatever you want with the setup. If this is your thing, keep it being your thing. I just think this might be more fun sometimes, you know?
Obviamente, su preferencia que puedan hacer lo que quieran, pero es una recomendación.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tell me, what was the biggest challenge for you in this piece?
¿Cuál fue el desafío más grande en esta pieza para usted?
Bueno, yo voy a hablar por como individualmente. Digamos, como la velocidad de los redobles para que la nota estuviese como mantenida y no se escuchara se escuchara la nota larga. A mí me costó bastante.
Okay, so Naibeth is saying that she find really difficult to find the speed of the rolls, so the note wouldn't like sound uneven on the different hits. It was really difficult for her because she had to find the exact speed that she wanted to sound in, so it could sound even comfortable.
Nice. Did you find it? Do you like where it is now?
Sí.
So, si te gusta? Yeah, she likes it very much.
Good. What about the rest of the ensemble?
Bueno, para mí también básicamente eso de la velocidad de los redobles y la parte que estoy tocando tiene, bueno, los redobles también me octavas, con cambios siempre con la izquierda y todos esos cambios siempre iban con José. Entonces, ¿sabes? Como que la velocidad de los redobles pendiente de los cambios de él, más la red, ¿sabes? Como que bastante complicado.
So there were 3 factors for youth because his part has rolls as well, but he has it on octaves, different octaves. So, and also in the left hand, he has a lot of drastic changes on the mallets. So he also has this rhythm that is matching Jose's rhythm. So it was a little bit difficult for him to match that rhythm and keep those rolls and have that separation of changes between the mallets. At the end, I think he found it, but he says that it was the biggest challenge in this piece for him.
Yes, I understand.
A mí no me costaron los redobles.
So Jose is super good and he didn't have any trouble with the roll.
Realmente lo más difícil es no fallar notas, porque en el vibráfono se crea como que esa disonancia de una vez que cambia el acorde, etcétera. O sea, lo difícil fue no fallar notas.
So the hardest part for Jose, because he was in the vibraphone, was not to fail a note, not to make any mistakes, because of the harmonic quality of the piece. It changes completely the dissonances. So if he makes one little mistake, the chord is already changed. It's everything different. So the hardest part was to not have a mistake on every note he makes.
I will agree with Jose. That is usually my goal also when I play, not to make mistakes. Good. Yes, I totally understand it. I think all of you are right, and you've already found a really great solution. I think this is really hard to do for percussion because the original version of this piece is so dependent on the strings that can crescendo through a note, and we can either play staccato or we play vibraphone, but it has a decay, right? So I think you've done a beautiful job as is. However, I would say maybe a few things that you can consider just to see. And I wonder if you tried them. Maybe they're good ideas, maybe they're bad ideas. But have you tried actually playing with bows, any parts?
With bows, like string bows?
Yes.
Que se han considerado tocar con arcos en algunas partes.
No, realmente no.
No, we haven't considered it.
Okay. Do you think it's a terrible idea?
¿Piensa que es una terrible idea o una idea terrible? No. O sea, para ustedes
No, pero creo que no hay espacio
Quizás en
para...
este arreglo no.
maybe in this arrangement it's a little bit difficult because there's not as much space in between notes.
Okay.
O sea, obviamente que la idea está cool y se entiende, pero quizás en esta versión no, porque no está pensada para tener espacio.
Yeah, we understand the idea and it sounds really cool, but for this arrangement it might not seem like the ideal thing to do.
Okay. Yeah, totally.
Porque lo que puedes decirles es que en nuestro caso los redobles nunca paran. Y en el caso de José,
Yo no.
Él está haciendo melodía todo el tiempo.
They say that, for example, in Naibeth and Youth's cases, because they're the marimbas, the rolls never stop. And in Jose's case, he always has this forward melody that he's doing on vibraphone.
Un poco para los redobles.
Right, and there are bows, like traditional string bows would be hard to use with such quick changing notes. But for example, there's this thing, at least in America, and I'm sure we can get it to you in Venezuela somehow, called Incredible, which are really short bows but are really quick to respond, and you can actually play melodies almost with it. I wonder if that's something that's worth looking into.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be everybody. Obviously, I know that there are busier times and less busy times, but maybe just the opening melody could be with bows. I don't know, but just a thought.
Tal vez puede que la melodía que abre puede ser solo con arcos y después uno cambia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, if you do a recording of it that is not like you don't want to be able to play it live, but just to put something out there, like most people do, is just to record it with overdubs. Like you could do bowing and playing with mallets and all these things, because in a recording session, you're not limited to it being, doable live. It's just produced, and it's really interesting layers, and it could be a really interesting audio experience for people who walk around with their headphones.
Que de repente en una grabación dedicada que pueden experimentar, o sea, como una grabación, o sea, diferentes tomas en donde hagan efectos con
Claro.
que llegan a una grabación.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, are you using the fluffiest mallets you have on the marimba, like the softest?
Están usando las baquetas más suaves que tienen la marimba.
Creo que sí. Creo que sí, no, o sea, como la...
No, es que no se puede, porque como toca un momento, o sea, Naibet sí, Naibet obviamente sí, pero
yeah.
Jude no puede porque él toca muchas cosas agudas. Pues no responden esas baquetas.
So Naibeth is using the fluffiest ones we have, the softest one we have. Youth, on the other hand, Jose says that he doesn't have he has like a medium soft because he has a lot of high-pitched stuff on the high octaves. So we don't know if that would work with softer mallets.
Yeah, I totally understand. I wonder for Naibeth, and I don't know if you've tried this, but maybe you can play with bass drum mallets, like something that is very different and very fluffy. It would make you play a lot slower on your rolls, but it might, like if you have a special mallet, and this is not the first time it's done, this is already done in percussion, it would make a really sort of organ-like sound,
Okay.
So this music, I think, is really great because everybody knows it, and everybody would be really curious to see a percussion group do it. But when you're looking at, giving it a longer life, what makes it really interesting is if the arrangement is has some special sauce. And you can look for inspiration. You can look at, for example, Vasilena Serafimova and Toma Enko, their albums for piano and marimba, where she plays prepared marimba and plays some hanging crotales and stuff. It's like their arrangements are not just for the way the instruments are normally played. They play very strange things, but they're beautiful. They're really colorful that way,
Que de repente, o sea, esta es una muy buena pieza porque todo el mundo la conoce. Entonces, obviamente, cuando uno hace el arreglo, de repente uno busca como que agregarle algo extra al arreglo y no simplemente lo mismo de la pieza original. Entonces, ahí ponen los ejemplos que dijo de los compositores. cuando ellos hacen una obra, o al menos un arreglo de una obra, ya tienen como que cosas diferentes que no se tocan usualmente, como se tocarían, pero que suenan bastante bonitos.
Okay.
Okay.
And one more thing, arrangement-wise, there
Dime
is
cosas
that thing in bar 17, 18, 19, like bar 20, Jose, you play a simple line on the vibraphone, which is really clarinet and oboe in the orchestra.
Okay.
And it sounds very different because it's a rare moment in this like wave of big orchestra things that is really pure. And I wonder if you played with a different mallet, if you had just one mallet that sounded a little bit different, maybe a little bit more nasal because it's the oboe or something, that it would make that section special. And I think you had time to add mallets or change them there.
Se pregunta si en esta sección, si podías de repente considerar el cambio de una baqueta más nasal para hacer como el match de ese sonido entre más oboe y clarinete, porque claro, esa sección hay un contraste orquestal que el protagonista en esa melodía son los oboes y clarinetes. Entonces se pregunta si tenés una chance de cambiar una baqueta más nasal, en un sentido de que haga como esa relación de sonido.
Yeah.
O sea, sí puedo.
Sí, podría tomar 5 baquetas.
He can manage to do the changes. It's no problem.
Yeah. So maybe that's just something that would make it pop out. And the last thing that I would say is, again, you played really beautifully. The way you play, Jose, for me, as I'm experiencing this with eyes and ears, is that a lot of the times you go ti pa pi pa pi da, like you do down up for almost every quarter note. Ti da pi pa da ti da pa pi pa. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you look at how the bowing works on strings, like they have the longest bow. And the conductor also doesn't have any sharp edges when they conduct, right? They're sort of floating. I think as a visual experience, if you could play more be-do da dee da dee da, have less of those stop and go between long notes, it might give us also this visual experience of it being more peaceful.
Una experiencia visual de que sea más pacífica la pieza en términos de movimiento corporal. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I loved this. It's really so beautiful. These are just some ideas because I don't know what else I would tell you for these 30 minutes. I mean, but let's try to find something, different, maybe and a little interesting.
Vamos a ver si encuentra algo ahí. O sea, no sabe qué decirlo porque le gustó bastante eso, porque ustedes la tocaron bastante bien, pero no sabe qué más decir si tiene más preguntas.
Bueno, sí, puedes preguntarle que si la velocidad de los redobles entre, como tal, las marimbas, ¿sí? es como que la correcta, por así decirlo. O sea, que si se escucha completamente llano o si ya se escucha el taca, o sea, como para
So, they're really worried about the speed of the rolls in the marimbas. So they want to know if, from your perception, from your hearing, how did you find the speed of the rolls? If it was the correct speed, if it sounded very even, or if it sounded uneven. They want to know about that.
I think it was mostly good, or it was really good. It's really challenging to play anything meaningful on marimba rolls. Okay, it's hard, but I will say maybe two things that came up. One is sometimes the rolls have gaps when you're changing awkward chords. It's like pi, pa. And these are small things to practice so that they're really well connected. That was one thing that stood out to me.
Okay.
And then the other thing was in that moment right before the big arrival at 28, when the marimbas are really loud. I don't know if that was the recording, but the marimbas were just really big, and I was really aware that it was like daga 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 daga.
No sé si fue la grabación, pero entonces la marimba.
Yeah.
But I mean, you and I play the same instrument. I couldn't take out the daga daga myself. So, you know, that's why I said maybe trying bass drum mallets would be interesting. You never know.
Probando de las maquetas de Congo sería interesante por
Okay.
It's a challenge for any core, like any music that's like that for us. So that's why it's
un rato para
being creative is fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I would say, and these were just really details, like I missed some of the counterpoint, like some of the second voices that follow the vibraphone. I wish I heard them more, like bar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There is in marimba 1 that
contrapunto de la marimba 1.
that those
56.
quarter notes.
26.
26.
Ah,
A ver, hay unos contrapuntos a veces en la marimba que se pierden entre el vibráfono y las marimbas. O sea, la segunda cosa que hacen las marimbas a veces se pierden, no la escuchan.
Okay.
And then
Por ejemplo, con paciente.
bar 25, marimba 2.
Compa 25, marimba 2.
For those 3 bars, I really wish I heard it more because that's so big in orchestra. That's so.
Me gustaría que hubiese escuchado más porque en la orquesta es bastante grande.
Okay.
And then bar 38, marimba 1, and then
38.
split with the
Marimba
vibraphone. I think it's really nice.
Marimba 1 con el vibráfono, pues está bien.
And in bar 39, marimba 1, the last 2 notes.
1, las últimas 2 notas.
Yeah. Those were really details. I mean, very, very small things, but just something that I know that the orchestra plays really big. And I know it's there, but it's blended really with the ensemble. And I wish it was.
Está ahí, pero está muy mezclado.
Good.
Cosa que la orquesta toca muy grande.
Okay.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
good.
All right. Well done, guys.
Thank you.
Excellent work.
Yeah, thank you.
Buen trabajo, chicas.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Bye.
Bye. Adios.
Adios.
All right. And we come to our final artist, which is I Cheng.
All right.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hey, how
Hi,
you doing?
Jane.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So, I Cheng, maybe you could just talk a little bit about yourself and the piece whilst I just cue the video up.
Okay.
And I'll get back to you. All right.
Okay. So I graduated with a bachelor degree at University of North Texas, and I recently just got a master degree at Wichita State University, and I'm currently a member of playing in Wichita Symphony Orchestra. I found this piece, Real Bad Now, really fascinating because I really like John Savas as a composer, and I really like the sounds he created in this piece. And yeah, it's a really interesting piece for me.
That's really cool. I agree. He's great.
All right. So we're here, a bit of Real Bad Now. Okay.
Nicely done. Good job,
Thank you.
Cheng. Yeah, really cool. How long have you been playing this?
I think like a few months for
A
now.
few months. Do you play the
Yeah.
whole piece or just this movement?
Yeah, I played the whole piece.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
it's not easy. Nothing in John's music is easy to play, but it's so beautiful, so worth it. Okay, well, tell me, what do you think about this? I have some ideas, but I'd love to know what is your experience of this music and this performance.
I would say for me, this is a pretty rhythmic piece, especially for this movement. And I always try to find it's pretty dark. I don't know, like pretty deep and sad music for me. So I'm trying to giving the vibes this like kind of sad, deep vibe for people, and also, yeah.
Okay. Does this one movement also strike you as sad?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, nice. I was gonna say, for me, when I experienced you playing, I just kept imagining, I know this has nothing to do with what he wrote, but like flying cars and, bright lights and just like this freedom of floating. And I felt like the whole time I just wanted to dance. So I was not sad when I heard you play, but it's absolutely totally valid, and it's part of a bigger experience. So. But anyway, I'm wondering, what is your what would you say on a scale of 1 to 10, and 10 being John Psathas? How hard is this to play for you?
I would say like 7, 6 or 7.
What's most challenging?
I would say technically, and also being super precise with the rhythm. It's the most challenging for me.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Was there anything else?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would say the same, probably. That was my impression. So again, we all know that John's music is never simple, and he loves to write this virtuosic, energetic, fast music with so many details. And that's why he loves percussion, is because percussion, like the note lasts so short, it like gets out of the way, so he can interweave all these small things, and you have to be in control of everything at the same time. So you're like a full orchestra in one person. It really requires a huge sense of control and huge control of the instrument. And it's great. It challenges us to be better. But one thing that I would say, you've listened to Fabian Ziegler play this on his album?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's really great, and they have a really nice connection.
Right.
Yeah, it's really awesome. So one thing I would actually ask is, have you tried just listening to the track? So not playing along to it, but just listening to it.
I did, but not very much.
Yeah. And I think, because John is really thoughtful about every element, one thing that seems to me to be hard about this piece is that it's so fast-paced, and you have to play something that seems effortless, but it's actually really tough. But also the way it's fast music, but the way that the sounds in the track are placed is that they're on the back end of the beat. Like that bass is super lazy, and you're supposed to hear where the grid is all the time. And so one thing I would say is really useful is to really get used to listening to the track on its own, and sort of like you can sing your music in your head parallel to it, but just get used to knowing what you're supposed to hear. I think that will help you a lot with centering yourself, so that time isn't an issue and rhythm isn't an issue, because you always know where you are with regard to the track. Yeah.
Sure.
The other question I would have is, have you tried playing just like the melodic skeleton of this music? Because even though it's really busy, there's a melody in it.
Right. I did try, but it's very challenging. But yeah.
Yeah, but John Psathas, again, is not someone who's going to let us just walk in there and use everything we've known so far and just be smart and like it's gonna be easy. No, it's gonna need to like it's easy in the end, but it actually I think requires a lot of preparation. And one of the things that I would do if I were you is, you could, for example, highlight the music that is part of the melody all in one color, or even, I mean, I am crazy. I would do this, is I would copy the score if I have it on my iPad or whatever, and I would white out all the notes that are not the melody. So I could read the rhythms of the melody only, if necessary. But just so I could just play that stuff that I know has to be in the forefront. I think that would be really super helpful, because sometimes I don't get to hear because it's so busy, and I see that you are so mentally and physically involved in sort of catching every note. I don't quite hear you being able to focus as much on the few notes that pop in and like are supposed to feel like this slow floating dee da ba, like it doesn't sound quite like that. So I would suggest something like that.
Okay.
Another thing I'd say is tricky for me. Actually, how did you record this? I'm curious. Did you had a monitor behind you, so the audio was played to your back, right?
Oh no, actually I do it like separately. I record the video and then I put the track on it because that's some like technical issues, so I couldn't put the audio with me.
But you had it in your ears.
Yeah, I have my headphones on it. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's fine. And that's actually, I mean, that's much better than recording the track coming from a speaker, because that would just sound terrible. But one thing that I think can make or break this kind of performance is, what is your relationship to the track? Are you one with the track, or is the track your accompaniment, or are you sort of sharing responsibilities with it? Are you supposed to be really bright in front of it or blend with it? What do you think with this particular movement?
I would say me and the recording is like a one thing, because we sometimes we play the same melody with the vibraphone and the track, so I would say it's pretty much like one thing.
Yeah, I think the track is definitely a very important. Your track is your partner. It really isn't an accompanist, and it can't be, because it will go even if you don't want to go. It will keep going. So
yeah,
and so I would say you did a great job recording it. But when you're playing this, I assume you want to play this live somewhere. It's really important to make sure that you have the correct. Like everything is fine-tuned perfectly, so you sound exactly where you want to be with the track. And so have you played this live for people?
Yeah, I did.
But how did you do it?
Just put it in to the speaker. Yeah.
And play vibraphone acoustically, right? No amplification.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And this will vary depending on where you play, whether it's a small room or a big room or, a concert space. But I think one thing that is really helpful is that if you could, if you're playing in a bigger space, if you could mic your vibraphone so that you could control the volume relationship and even the brightness of both things, like so many different parameters of both the track and the vibraphone, so that you could blend them best. And, this is, if you want to be heard in an acoustic setting with this, you would have to change your mallet or play higher or whatever. But all these things can negatively, or like they can take away bit by bit from how comfortable you feel performing, versus knowing the exact mallet that you want for the sake of the sound color and how articulate it is or how bright it is or dark, whatever. And then having a mic, and then making sure that your sound and your vibraphone that are coming through the same speakers are exactly where you want them. So it's like mixed properly. I think that would be like, that would give you really a lot of comfort in a performance, I think, or would allow you to be comfortable. Is the tempo okay for you? Do you still feel like it's a little bit too fast?
It's a little bit too fast for me still.
Do you lower the tempo to practice?
Yeah, I did.
How do you do it? Do you use a special app or something?
Well, it came with it.
Oh, okay.
That's a practice track and something like that.
What tempi are they at, or like they're at percentages or something?
Its percentage is like 70, 80, 90, 100.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's great. There's also an awesome app that I use all the time called, let me see, Audacity. No, I'm not. I'm full of, sorry, I'll tell you right now.
Okay.
But Audio Stretch. I'm not sponsored or anything. It's this little blue thing. And what's really great with Audio Stretch is that you can set it to, 91%, 92%, 93, and everything in between. So if you feel like 90 to 100 is a big jump for you, you could slowly bring it up. And that's something, you can do this in other apps, I'm sure, but that's something that is worthwhile. Are you planning to memorize this?
I'm trying to, yeah.
Okay. And is it hard?
I think that will help.
Yeah. Yeah, it will for sure help you. I mean, you can still have the music in front of you if you feel it's necessary, but I think just to feel free to fly without it is super important, and not staring at the music would be great. Awesome. So I had a couple of so my impression was that you were actually, which is interesting because you say that it might be a little bit too fast for you. You're a little ahead of the track. Not all the time, but whenever there is a little, glitch, you're usually actually early, which means that you're faster than you need to be. But this happens, I think, normally when we feel self-conscious about not being able to make it to something because it's challenging for us. Then we step on the gas pedal and then we, go past it. I think actually your goal here would be or for me, if I was in your shoes doing this, I would really try to relax while playing this. Speed comes from being relaxed. It doesn't come from muscle. Relaxed players are fast players. And so if you could just play everything in as relaxed sort of manner as possible, that would be great. One more thing I would say, just as a performance thing. So besides moving the stand away and playing memorized, is the very end. So the piece starts off immediately, or this movement with like bang, you're immediately playing something that's really fast, and you're constantly moving, so you have no time to really think or anything. But then all of a sudden you have all those rests when it's sort of fading away. And what I see you doing in performance is sort of like counting.
Yeah.
Sort of like in an orchestra, like, okay, we have 8 beats and then we play again. But I don't think that is exactly what this is there for, right? He's thinning out the texture, it's dying off, it's going to shift into something else. I think as performers, we have to be really comfortable with shaping the silence. And this is shaped a lot of the times with your physical presence and how you address it. But silence, as an absolutely integral part of music, has to also have meaning. It's not just there for us to stop moving our mallets and to wait until we have an action again to initiate sound. Silence, I mean, in crucial spaces can be the very thing that gives us goosebumps and makes something, it's like a palate cleanser. It's just like something that helps you really experience the sounds when they come to you in a much more vivid way. And I think for a player like you, you have so much maturity. I think it is now time for you to feel comfortable standing there in front of the audience and not playing anything. Because that's part of the experience. And they can just look at you or enjoy the music, everything that's going on in the track. But you are not... I feel like a lot of the times if we're there counting sort of while there are rests or whatever, or we don't know what to do with ourselves, it's almost like we're saying, oh, I'm so sorry I'm not playing. I'm so sorry I'm not impressing you with something right now. Like, oh, I don't know what to do with this. It's really important to be very in charge of the silence.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you, I'm sure you've seen some great speakers, like they don't have to be motivational speakers. They could be politicians. They could be, cultural figures, like anyone. But when you see someone deliver a really impactful speech, there's the cadence of the speech, right? The way people speak. And then some of the best speakers in the world, I think, are those that know how to stop in a room full of people and just stare people down and not say anything, because they are simply in control of everything. It's just like you're talking and then you stop.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't try to give into that awkward feeling of, God, I gotta fill in the silence. What people are waiting for me to say something. Let me say something. No, you're a mature player. You're a beautiful musician. Do not shy away from your ability to shape an experience with the absence of intentional sound. And again, I think this is not just in this piece, but anytime you have, like, if you think of the opening of Rebon, like of Rebon's A, you know, ding, dum, ding, dum. What is that? Everything that happens between, you know, after those two notes before they repeat, is it like ding, dum, da, da, ding, dum, count, count? It's not, you know. It is enjoying that silence, or it is enjoying the echo of the sound, and so on. And so I would say for you, I would really love to see you sort of fade away with the music a little bit and feel comfortable with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Do you have any questions?
I do have a question, but not specific for this music. I have a question for tips as a chamber musicians. Like if I want to be a chamber musician, or if I want to form my own percussion group or chamber music group, do you have any like tips or something that I need to be aware of? Yeah.
So many things. Do you have a group you like playing with, or any person?
I don't. But
not yet. Okay.
Yeah, not yet.
Okay. Is there anyone like from school that you had a good experience with, or someone who lives nearby, maybe right now, who might be interested in a similar type of music or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have some. Yeah.
You do have?
Yeah. I'm keep asking people to play duo or chamber music with me right now. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, chamber music is my favorite part of existence in the music world. And for me, as I mentioned to the previous trio that was on here, really the magic of chamber music comes from genuinely loving those people, like genuine friendship and genuine shared vision about how you're gonna, you know, approach, whether it's a one-time project or whether it's a long-term commitment, like you want to have a group and you want that group to grow and to be your source of income or whatever. I think a lot of it comes from a place of honesty and great vulnerability. But you know, it's such a broad question. What I would say is, what I would suggest to you, if you are not yet set on who you want to play with or what kind of music you want to play with, try to, or set up several trial performances and invite some people who are interesting to you. Like maybe you played with someone in school that was great, or maybe you didn't play with someone in school, but you saw them play with other people and you're like, I really want to try to play with you. Or it could be anyone, really. You don't have to have gone to school with them. Just ask someone who's playing you love and, you know, see if they're interested in having a project. Organize a concert locally if you can. You know, if you have access to instruments now, you said that you're with the symphony right now. Maybe your, you know, one or two trial partners can come in and you can rehearse for a week and you can all decide on a program together so that everyone has something that they feel comfortable with and they've contributed. And then give it a try. Give it a try locally where the risk isn't, you know, you're not going to have to pay for any crazy travel. You're not going to, you know, have like a logistical nightmare with instruments because you're set. Give it a shot and see how you feel. So much of chamber music, besides playing, which is really important, is also, are you okay if in the middle of the night while traveling, your tire bursts, and will that person next to you be really awesome to help? Or will they be whining and terrible to be around? You know, are they a really great buddy, or are they a prima donna? So much of it is like just the human element is really big. So I would say try as many people as you can while you have the opportunity. Chamber music is awesome, and it also is really great because you can pull from several pools of people. Like you have a lot of contacts, but that other person does too, and they're different. And if you're looking for concerts or support or whatever, you have probably twice as many people to ask than if you're alone and you're doing something solo. So, I mean, I highly, highly recommend chamber music. It's really awesome. But you have WPG, so this is already like you're already putting it out there that you're interested in groups, and that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you.
Yeah.
Yay.
Great. So I'm just going to bring who's a couple of people had to go to rehearsals. I know that. So Huiyin's still here. Hey.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello there.
Remy might well join us. So I didn't know, Ksenija, if you've got like, here he is, maybe just a few minutes for a few questions.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's anything I can help with.
All right. Oh, someone got some music on in the background or something. No, that's okay. All right. Has anyone got any questions? Oh wow, no questions. You've covered it all.
I've said it all.
Yeah, no, some amazing words of wisdom there, and it's quite amazing actually. I've made a few notes in that session, and I've obviously spent too much time with you because I reckon I probably had about 75% of what you had down, so that's quite interesting.
That's great.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I suppose one question I've got is that you have asked everyone. Actually, before that, if anyone's interested in checking Ksenija's masterclass out from 2019, that's on the Video Vault, so you can go back to that. But one of the questions I think you asked was about like who you perform to, whether it's yourself. I think you asked Remy that as well. So I'm going to bat that back at you, that one.
Wow. Okay, thanks. Do I perform for the composer or the composer's vision in mind, audience, jury, or me? As I said, I think there's no way that I could be taken out of the equation. So I'm sort of always there anyway. And I think I take my selfishness with choosing who I play with and what I play. So I choose to play Stravinsky and I choose to play with Liana. And those are two of my favorite, living beings, sort of, or no, he's not living anymore, but beings. And so it then becomes really easy to try to think about what Stravinsky would like or not, or what the audience would like or not, and so on. But I am always really mindful, I think, of the composer and the audience in a lot of ways. And what I do a lot when I learn music is that I do the kind of prep that actors do, which is that I come up with a backstory. So I do a lot of digging about their life to connect with them as a human being, because that means a lot to me. I don't just play music of, some person. I always try to understand their hardships and their life and everything. And then I'm also like, I give myself a break, if the audience doesn't love it, of course I am sorry, but also, that's it. If the jury doesn't like it, I mean, I wish everyone loved everything I did for the sake of me giving good experiences to people. But also it's totally okay if not everything, gets an amazing response from everyone. I just do it from a place of honesty, I think, and I really do the best I can. And that's it. That sort of is where the conversation ends for me.
Yeah. I suppose it also depends on the performance situation as well, whether it's part of a larger scope recital or it's just a snapshot piece of repertoire, because that would affect things massively as well.
Absolutely.
I think for me, I think the Trinity is trying to strike a balance with all of them.
Yeah.
If you can perform something that you really enjoy and perform it for yourself, but it's also going to relate to the audience and they're going to buy into it. And if they're going to buy into it and the audience is going to buy into it, then the composer's probably going to be on board as well. I mean, I don't know any composer that, you see like a massive round of applause, then they say, I really hated that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I think that's the ultimate goal, isn't it? To try and sort of be really selective with how you approach your programs. Yes. And trying to strike a balance between those three.
Yes,
You know?
absolutely. But also I think my advice for young people is experiment with what kind of music you play. Don't just expect other people to give you concerts or to give you repertoire or to play repertoire that's already written. I mean, if you're a classical musician, you can still do something with other genres of music, and you can still just sort of step out of the box of playing mallets in this one certain way and only of the music that's already been written. You can do so much more. And one of the things that I always do with my students is I ask them, like, what is it that they're genuinely listening to in their cars and in their headphones on their way home? And then we arrange that music for percussion. And it always gets them to think about, okay, well, wow, this is what arranging is, or this is what orchestration is. And we play music that they genuinely like, whether it's video game music or Billie Eilish or, whatever it is in between. I think it's a really wonderful exercise for them to understand a lot of the process of writing. But not only that, it's like they connect with it. They're much more excited to have a concert. They're much more excited to invite their friends to come. And it's just, it also makes them think like, oh my God, this is all music. It's not like percussion music and then everything else. It's like all the same thing. So yeah, I would say like really take ownership of what you play. And even if your teachers give you a lot of stuff that is educational and important for you, still go and play every day at least something that you like to play. If it's your warm-up and you want to warm up to chords written by Sting because you like how Fragile sounds, do that. Don't play those open fifths because they're terrible. Like they're so boring. Really make every part of you involved in the process. Don't forget who you are and what you genuinely like to listen to.
Yeah. Fantastic. Anyone else before we wrap this up? All right. Well, thanks so much for your time, Ksenija. I know you've been busy touring Poland and you're about to head home to the US, so we'll let you go. But it was great to catch up, and good to see that you're doing well in your career and in general life as well. So that's cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm just going to wrap this stream up. So next week we have a double bill Porter duo. We've got Joe Porter, and we've also got Vanessa Porter as well. They're going to be tag teaming. Well, not at the same time, but back to back. So we will see you all next week. Thanks very much.